Module 3, Unit 5, Teaching Phonics and Syllabic Analysis. Phonics and syllabic analysis are indispensable tools in developing literacy, providing students with the ability to decode words, read fluently, and comprehend texts. These foundational skills, when taught effectively, empower students to become confident and capable readers. However, phonics instruction must be integrated into meaningful reading experiences, adapted to individual learners, and taught with strategies that encourage lifelong literacy. By emphasizing real-world applications and tailoring instruction to students' developmental levels, educators can create programs that bridge the gap between decoding and comprehension. Phonics instruction begins with teaching consonant and vowel correspondences, which form the backbone of decoding skills. Students first learn to associate letters with sounds, starting with straightforward consonant sounds, like the S in sun. Early instruction often focuses on teaching 5 or so consonants along with short vowels, equipping students with the tools to decode simple words. For example, a student encountering the word chat might recognize the familiar part at, which serves as a pronounceable word component. Similarly, teaching foundational elements like the prefix un provides students with a simple and consistent tool for decoding and understanding word meanings, as it frequently appears in everyday vocabulary and consistently conveys negation or reversal. This focus on basic patterns helps students develop confidence in their decoding abilities. The word apple is better than ant for illustrating the sound of short A, because apple begins with a genuine short A sound. In contrast, the in ant blends with the nasal n, which can make it harder for students to isolate and recognize the vowel sound. This distinction is important when teaching phonics, as clear examples help students associate letters with their corresponding sounds accurately. The complexity of the English language presents challenges that necessitate strategic approaches. Variability in letter-sound relationships, such as the G in gem versus goat or the C in call versus sell, requires students to employ strategies like the variability strategy. This technique encourages students to try one pronunciation, and if it doesn't make sense, attempt another. Such strategies teach flexibility and critical thinking, essential skills for navigating the irregularities of English spelling and pronunciation. Syllabic analysis complements phonics instruction by helping students decode multisyllabic words. This skill becomes increasingly important as students progress beyond single-syllable words and after short vowel patterns have been introduced. Words like nature and nation, for example, challenge students to identify open and closed syllable patterns. Teaching these patterns allows students to break down longer words into manageable parts, making them less intimidating and more accessible. Syllabic analysis provides a systematic approach to tackling complex words, which is particularly beneficial for struggling readers and older students. While phonics instruction focuses on decoding, it must also be tied to meaning. Teaching students to read pseudo-words like riz or bup may provide practice with phonics skills, but it neglects the meaning processor, a critical component of literacy. Decoding without understanding does little to develop fluent and comprehensive reading skills. Therefore, phonics and syllabic analysis must always be taught within the context of real reading. By connecting decoding skills to meaningful texts, educators ensure that students can apply their knowledge in practical and engaging ways. High-frequency words, despite their importance, often pose challenges due to their irregular spelling patterns. Many of these words are borrowed from other languages, making them difficult to decode using standard phonics rules. Teaching high-frequency words requires a blend of strategies, such as repeated exposure and practice within familiar texts. Encouraging students to read a series of easy books builds their confidence and fluency, while methods like Buddy Buzz, where students discuss what they've read with peers, foster engagement and comprehension. These activities make reading a social and enjoyable experience, promoting voluntary reading and a love for books. Effective phonics instruction also involves recognizing the limitations of certain strategies. For instance, relying on picture clues to identify unfamiliar words bypasses decoding skills and can hinder long-term literacy development. Similarly, predicting words based on context encourages guessing rather than systematic decoding. While these strategies may offer temporary support, they do not equip students with the tools needed for independent reading. Instead, teaching students to use phonics-based strategies, such as recognizing pronounceable word parts, provides a more reliable foundation for decoding. The developmental stage of young learners must also guide phonics instruction. In kindergarten, for example, writing is often focused on exploration and expression, allowing children to experiment with letters and sounds. A student who spells the word name as N-A-M is in the alphabetic stage, where they use letter names to represent sounds. This developmental phase is a natural part of learning and should be encouraged as students refine their understanding of spelling conventions. Teachers can support this growth by providing opportunities for students to write and experiment with language in meaningful ways. Vocabulary development is closely tied to phonics and syllabic analysis. In preschool, activities that build vocabulary have the greatest long-term educational payoff. Reading aloud to students is one of the most effective ways to introduce new words and concepts. The best time to connect new vocabulary words to students' experiences and provide examples of their use in different contexts is after the story has been read to the class. This approach ensures that students have the context needed to understand and apply the words, enriching their language and comprehension skills. Phonics instruction must be flexible and responsive to individual learners. Monitoring progress and leveling books according to decoding skills ensures that students are matched with appropriate materials. For example, a beginning reader may benefit from books that reinforce simple consonant and vowel correspondences, while a more advanced reader might work with texts that include multisyllabic words and complex patterns. This differentiation allows teachers to meet students where they are and guide them toward higher levels of proficiency. Planning an effective phonics program involves integrating decoding skills into real-world applications. Students must see the relevance of phonics in their reading and writing experiences. For instance, when encountering unfamiliar words, students can be taught to sound out each letter, as demonstrated by a student decoding the word vet as V-E-T, vet. This systematic approach reinforces the connection between phonics skills and the construction of meaning from text. Additionally, phonics instruction should be reinforced through writing activities, where students apply their decoding skills to spelling and composing words. As students progress in their literacy journey, they must learn to balance decoding with comprehension. The true test of reading is not just the ability to decode words, but to construct meaning from text and answer questions about what was read. Teaching students to integrate phonics and syllabic analysis with comprehension strategies ensures that they become well-rounded readers. By focusing on both the mechanics of reading and the meaning behind the words, educators prepare students to navigate increasingly complex texts with confidence. The goal of phonics and syllabic analysis instruction is to empower students to become fluent, independent readers. These foundational skills provide the tools needed to decode words, build vocabulary, and comprehend texts. However, their success depends on thoughtful and intentional teaching practices that connect decoding to real reading experiences. By fostering a love for language and equipping students with the skills to navigate its complexities, educators lay the groundwork for lifelong literacy and learning. Unit 6. High-frequency words, fluency, and extended reading. Fluency in reading is a cornerstone of literacy, enabling students to navigate texts effortlessly and with understanding. Central to this fluency are high-frequency words, voluntary reading, and the process of automaticity, often referred to as orthographic mapping. This process, described by Kilpatrick as the means by which readers store written words for immediate, effortless retrieval, is essential for turning unfamiliar words into familiar, instantly accessible sight words. By focusing on high-frequency word instruction, developing fluency, and encouraging voluntary reading, educators provide students with the tools they need to become confident and capable readers. High-frequency words are the backbone of fluent reading, as they make up a large portion of the text students encounter. Teaching these words effectively requires a systematic approach rooted in phonics. For example, determining which high-frequency words students can read immediately, which they need to sound out, and which are unknown is an excellent starting point. This method helps educators target instruction and build a student's sight vocabulary progressively. Words like the, which appears most often in print, are especially critical for students to recognize effortlessly. The best way to reinforce these words is through meaningful context, as reading them within sentences or stories allows students to see their function and relevance. Fluency is more than speed. It encompasses accuracy, expression, and comprehension. At its core, fluency depends on well-learned decoding skills, which provide the foundation for automaticity. Samuels defines automaticity as the ability to process written words and comprehend simultaneously, freeing up cognitive resources for understanding the text. This ability is built through practice and consistent exposure to words and patterns. For example, final E long vowels, while challenging because they cannot be decoded sound by sound like short vowels, become easier for students with repeated exposure and systematic teaching. Techniques like word building, which integrates onsets and rhymes with sound-by-sound analysis, help students internalize these patterns and apply them effectively. Encouraging voluntary reading is a critical strategy for improving fluency and fostering a love for literacy. Research shows that reading independently for as little as 10 minutes a day can significantly boost reading achievement. To be effective, voluntary reading programs must provide students with access to books that match their interests and reading levels. For example, ensuring that students engage in academic learning time, where they read books in which all but about 2 words out of every 100 are familiar, maintains their confidence and enjoyment. This balance of challenge and accessibility is key to making reading both instructional and pleasurable. Orthographic mapping underpins the ability to recognize high-frequency words and develop fluency. This process relies on students' decoding skills to connect the sounds and patterns of words with their written forms. As students encounter words repeatedly, these connections become automatic, enabling them to retrieve words effortlessly. For instance, teaching high-frequency words through phonics allows students to link letter-sound relationships with the visual forms of words. This approach not only builds sight vocabulary, but also strengthens the connection between decoding and comprehension. Fluency instruction must be introduced at the right developmental stage. According to Kuhn and Stahl, students should not begin fluency instruction until they can read beyond a mid-first grade level. This ensures they have a solid grasp of basic decoding skills, which are essential for success. Once these skills are established, students can benefit from methods like the stepping stone approach, where they read increasingly challenging books on the same topic to prepare for a more complex text. This gradual progression builds fluency and confidence, helping students tackle more difficult texts with ease. While developing fluency, it is important to avoid practices that overemphasize speed at the expense of comprehension. Timed oral reading tests, such as Dibbles, have been criticized for focusing too heavily on repeated readings of the same text, which can lead to rote memorization rather than genuine fluency. Instead, educators should balance speed, accuracy, and expression with comprehension. Silent reading, for example, is particularly effective for building comprehension because it allows students to process text at their own pace and develop a deeper understanding. This approach complements oral reading practice, creating a well-rounded fluency program. The best fluency programs integrate high-frequency word instruction, decoding practice, and opportunities for voluntary reading. For instance, reading high-frequency words in context not only reinforces their meaning, but also makes them more memorable. Programs that encourage students to read widely and discuss what they've read, such as buddy reading or book clubs, further enhance fluency and engagement. These practices make reading a social and enjoyable experience, fostering a love for books that extends beyond the classroom. The goal of teaching high-frequency words, developing fluency, and encouraging voluntary reading is to create readers who can navigate texts effortlessly and with understanding. By focusing on orthographic mapping and building automaticity, educators equip students with the skills they need to decode, comprehend, and appreciate written language. These foundational elements of literacy not only prepare students for academic success, but also inspire a lifelong love for reading.